Welcome to my channel HFY Tales, asterisk her world burned. But he refused to leave her asterisk. The city was burning, flames consuming everything Imara had ever known. Smoke clouded her lungs, debris rained from the sky, and chaos reigned in every shattered street. She ran, heart hammering, convinced she would die alone, but he was there. .com/unyielding, refusing to leave her behind when everyone else had abandoned hope. As the fire roared around them, danger closed in from every shadow, and the ground itself threatened to swallow them whole. In that moment, she realized survival wasn't just about escaping the fire, it was about trusting someone who would risk everything to save her. The sky above Imara's city split apart in flames, a grotesque ribbon of orange and crimson slicing through the night. The smoke rolled over the streets in choking waves, carrying with it the acrid scent of burning buildings, scorched metal, and something almost human. She ran blindly, her boots slamming against cracked pavement as sirens screamed around her, their shrill cries drowned by the roar of collapsing structures. Glass shattered from high above, sprinkling down like deadly rain, cutting her arms and shoulders as she stumbled forward. The city she had once believed unshakable, the heart of her home, the place of laughter, family and dreams, was gone. Every memory seemed to ignite and vanish in the inferno, leaving behind a hollow terror that clawed at her chest. Imara's mind screamed to her legs to keep moving, to escape the encroaching chaos, but even in the panic her eyes caught a figure, moving against the flames. He was tall, impossibly still amid the wreckage, his dark silhouettes outlined by the burning skyline. For a brief moment, she thought her imagination was playing tricks on her, that the exhaustion and fear were creating shadows in human form. And yet, he was real. He moved toward her with purpose, a calmness that contrasted sharply with the frenzy around them. He didn't run, didn't stumble over the debris like she did. He walked. "Stay close," he called, his voice cutting through the roar of the fire and the wailing sirens like a blade. There was an authority in it, a certainty that Imara didn't have the luxury to question. Something in her chest stirred, a strange mixture of fear and trust. And against every instinct screaming at her to run alone, she found herself moving toward him. As she drew closer, she noticed the small details, the way his boots barely made a sound on the rubble-strewn street, the way his eyes scanned the horizon with precision, taking in every falling piece of debris, every unstable structure, every danger. His calmness was maddening, almost infuriating in the way it made her own panic feel wrong. Unnecessary. They reached a section of the city that had been once bustling but now resembled a war zone. The street in front of them was completely obliterated. The bridge that once connected the lower district to the upper levels collapsed into a gaping chasm. The fire licked the edges of the ruins, and smoke filled the air so thickly that Imara could barely see her own hands. She turned to him, desperation clawing at her throat. "How are we supposed to get across?" she asked, her voice trembling. The words sounded weak even to her own ears. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied the gap, taking in the distance between the broken ends of the bridge, the precarious angles of fallen steel beams, and the clouds of smoke that made the world seem unreal. He seemed to weigh every possibility with almost surgical precision, and for the first time since the chaos began, Imara felt a flicker of hope. Then, without a word, he turned to her and extended his hand. "Trust me," he said, and there was no question in his tone, no hesitation. It wasn't just a command, it was a lifeline, a promise. Her heart raced as she grabbed his hand. The strength in his grip shocked her. It anchored her against the shaking ground and the waves of panic rising in her chest. He guided her carefully to the edge of the broken street. The heat from the flames burned her cheeks, and every instinct screamed to retreat, but he moved with a steady confidence that made her cling to him, literally and figuratively. With a final glance at the burning city behind him, he whispered, "On my mark." Imara nodded, her body rigid with fear. She had no choice, no other path to take. The fire roared louder, the ground trembled beneath them, and in that moment, time seemed to stretch, every second elongated into an eternity. He counted down in a low, steady voice, each number a pulse in her veins, and when he finally shouted, "Now," they leaped out. Air rushed past her in a torrent that stole her breath. The gap yawned beneath them, jagged steel and broken concrete threatening to consume them if they faltered. She screamed not entirely from fear, but from the sheer exhilaration of the leap, from the uncertainty of survival. His grip never wavered, never loosened, guiding her through the momentum. They landed hard on the opposite side, skidding across rubble and twisted metal, the sound of impact ringing in her ears. For a moment, she lay there, chest heaving, convinced she had broken every bone in her body. And then, as she opened her eyes, he was there, steady and unflinching, offering her a hand to pull her upright. "You okay?" he asked, almost casually, as if the world wasn't burning around them, as if every second weren't a fight against death. I think so," she whispered, her voice raw. She couldn't tear her eyes away from him, from the calm assurance he radiated in the face of destruction. Something inside her, some desperate, fragile part of her that had been screaming for hope, reached out and clung to him, They moved quickly, weaving through back alleys and side streets, the fire painting everything in unnatural shades of red and orange. Buildings groaned and collapsed around them, sending showers of sparks into the smoke-choked air. Shadows danced across walls, distorted by flickering flames and the chaotic collapse of structures. Amara could hear the frantic cries of people, trapped somewhere in the city, their voices rising above the roar of fire and destruction. She wanted to help, to reach out, to save them all, but the man beside her never faltered. His presence a constant reminder that they had to survive first as they ran. She noticed small things she hadn't before: the way he moved without hesitation, over fallen beams, the way he shielded her from falling debris without thinking, the way his eyes constantly scanned for threats. She wanted to ask who he was, how he knew what to do, but the words caught in her throat every time. And then, the ground beneath him shuddered violently. A low, ominous rumble rolled through the street, shaking loose pieces of masonry and metal. Amara froze, her grip tightening on his arm. "What now?" she whispered, terror threading through her voice. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took a cautious step forward, testing the ground. "We keep moving," he said finally, but his voice carried an edge of warning she hadn't noticed before. Before she could ask what he meant, a massive crack tore through the street beneath their feet, sending a cloud of dust and debris into the air. Amara stumbled, nearly falling into the widening fissure, and he caught her just in time. The fire burned hotter, the smoke thicker, and the city seemed determined to consume them both. And yet, through it all, he remained unwavering, a pillar of calm in the midst of absolute chaos. Amara realized, in a strange, gut-twisting way, that she didn't just want to survive, she needed him to survive with her. Somehow, against the odds, he had become her anchor, and without him, she would have been lost in the fire long ago. And then, just as they began to move again, a shadow detached itself from the smoke, a figure in the distance, moving toward them with an almost unnatural speed. Amara's heart leapt into her throat, and she instinctively moved closer to him. His eyes narrowed, his grip on her hand tightening ever so slightly. Whatever this new threat was, it was coming for them. They ran, hearts pounding in sync with the distant roar of collapsing buildings. Smoke stung Amara's eyes, filling her lungs with a bitter, choking heat. Every instinct screamed to keep moving, to escape the fire that consumed her city. But now there was something else pressing in around them, something alive, deliberate. The figure they had seen in the distance moved with unnatural speed, shadowing their flight through the ruined streets. The man beside her, still calm, still resolute, pulled her into a narrow alleyway, where the smoke was slightly thinner and the jagged remnants of walls offered brief concealment. "Stay close," he whispered again, his voice lower this time, edged with urgency she hadn't heard before. His eyes scanned every nook, every shadow, calculating, always calculating. She wanted to ask him who he was, why he was risking everything for her, but the words were caught in her throat. Fear and curiosity collided, making her chest tighten. There was no time for explanations, no time to unravel the impossible trust that had formed in mere minutes. The alley opened into a side street, and for a moment it felt as if the world had slowed. Ash drifted over broken pavement, carrying the acrid scent of burning metal. The buildings lining the street were half collapsed, windows shattered into jagged shards, balconies tilted at impossible angles. Somewhere above, a neon sign flickered weakly, casting an eerie and intermittent glow over the ruins. The man moved like a predator among the shadows, fluid and precise, and Amara realized somehow, inexplicably, that she had no choice but to follow him. They had only taken a few steps when a sound cut through the smoke like a blade, the low hum of machinery. Amara froze, chest hammering. The hum grew louder, almost metallic, vibrating through the cracked pavement beneath their feet. Her gaze darted upward, and the sight made her stomach turn. Drones, sleek and deadly, emerged from the smoky skyline, their searchlights slicing through the haze, scanning the streets for any sign of life. "They're after more than survivors," he muttered, almost to himself, his jaw tight, eyes narrowing. He took her hand and pulled her deeper into a crumbling courtyard, the walls around him scorched black, bricks loosened by the heat. "Keep your head down," he instructed. "Move. Only when I move." Amara's pulse raced. The drones' searchlights swept the streets, cutting through every shadow, every corner. They weren't just here to capture anyone, they were hunting. The weight of that realization pressed on her chest, but the man beside her remained steady, unshaken. He moved with a precision she couldn't comprehend, ducking under beams and leaping over rubble with an almost unnatural grace. Somehow, he always knew where to step, where to hide, and when to move. Every instinct screamed danger, yet he radiated control, a stark contrast to the chaos that threatened to engulf them. "Who are you?" she finally gasped, the voice barely audible above the worry of the drones. "How do you know all this?" He didn't answer at first. Instead, he scanned the street again, then lowered his voice. "I've been through this before. I know how it ends if you hesitate." His eyes locked onto hers, and in that fleeting moment, she saw more than focused. There was history, experience, and a relentless resolve, and I don't leave anyone behind. The word struck her almost like a lifeline thrown across the abyss of terror. Amara had been alone for so long, running through a world that had betrayed her, that had left her to burn. And yet, here was someone who refused to let her vanish, who made her survival as vital as his own. Fear still gripped her, but a spark of trust flared within her chest, with the drones descended further. Their thrumming hum growing deafening. The searchlights cut through the smoke, reflecting off broken glass and puddles of water on the cracked pavement. One of them caught a glimpse of movement. Her movement. "Move," he barked, shoving her behind a collapsed wall just as the spotlight swept over their hiding place. Sparks from nearby fires rained down, hissing as they hit metal and concrete. Amara pressed herself against the wall, barely breathing, heart hammering so violently she thought it would betray their position. "We have to keep going," he said once the immediate danger passed, pulling her up and guiding her through it. A series of twists and turns she could never have navigated alone. They ducked under archways and scaled piles of rubble, each step a gamble against falling debris and sudden collapses. "Why are they after us?" she asked, voice trembling. His lips pressed into a thin line. "Because they're not just hunting survivors, they're hunting witnesses," he replied, scanning the ruined skyline. "And you? You're more valuable alive than dead?" She wanted to ask him why, how, but he didn't offer more explanation. There wasn't time. A sudden vibration beneath their feet made her stumble, and the hum of the drones intensified, accompanied now by a deeper, mechanical growl. Shadows shifted in the smoke, moving in ways that didn't seem entirely natural. There's something about their precision and coordination made her stomach knot with dread. He pulled her into the remains of a collapsed building, the walls forming a crude shelter. Flames licked at the edges of the doorway, casting the interior in jagged, moving shadows. He crouched beside her, breathing heavily but with a strange, controlled rhythm. "You'll know you're with me," he said, voice low, "and they won't stop until they get what they want." Amara's mind raced. But why me? Why care? He looked at her then, eyes dark and intense, but tinged with something she couldn't name. "Because I don't abandon anyone." There was a pause, almost reverent, in the chaos around them. She wanted to argue, to push back, to demand answers, but before she could, the shadows in the doorway shifted again. Something was moving toward them, deliberate and unrelenting. The hum of the drones faded for a moment, replaced by the mechanical clanking of unseen feet, the scrape of metal on metal. "They're closer than I thought," he muttered, rising to his feet. He grabbed her hand, pulling her to her feet as well. "We can't stay here. We move now or we die." Adrenaline surged through her, a mixture of terror and determination. She clung to his hand, feeling the anchor of his resolve, the unspoken promise that he wouldn't let her fall. Together they slipped through a narrow gap in the rubble, moving as shadows among shadows, every step calculated, every breath measured, and then, as they rounded a corner, Amara's heart nearly stopped. The figure from before, humanoid form, impossibly fast, cloaked in darkness, stood directly in their path. It didn't move like a human. Its presence radiated intent, danger, and an intelligence that chilled her blood. She froze, and for the first time in hours, she felt completely helpless. The man beside her didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, placing himself between her and the figure. "You won't touch her," he said, voice low and dangerous. The figure tilted its head slightly, as if amused, then advanced. Amara's grip on his arm tightened. They were trapped, the fire behind them, the hunter before them, and no visible escape in sight. Her chest heaved with fear, her mind screaming for answers she didn't have. Yet, through it all, one thing remained clear. He would not abandon her, and whatever came next, she knew they would face it together. The tunnels beneath the city were a labyrinth of darkness and decay, the air thick with the acrid scent of smoke seeping from above. Amara followed him closely, her hands gripping his sleeve as he led her through the narrow, twisting corridors. Each step echoed ominously, bouncing off walls scarred by fire and neglect. She could hear the distant rumble of drones above, their lights occasionally piercing through cracks in the concrete ceiling, casting fleeting, ghostly patterns across the tunnel walls. Her pulse raced, not only from the exertion but from the awareness that they were being hunted. Every shadow seemed alive, every flicker of light a potential threat. She glanced at him, noting the way his muscles tensed, the careful calculation in every movement, the way he scouted each turn before she dared to follow. He was no ordinary man. There was experience etched into every line of his face, into the precision of his steps, into the way he carried himself with absolute confidence. "Despite the chaos above, you're fast," she whispered, struggling to keep her voice steady. "But how? How do you know this place so well?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he signaled her to duck as a loose piece of ceiling tumbled past them with a resounding crash. "I've been here before," he said finally, voice low and measured, long enough to know the exits, the traps, and the hidden routes. Every alley, every vent, every collapsed section, I know it. His eyes darted forward, scanning the faint glow from cracks above. And Amara realized with a chill that he wasn't just skilled. He had survived situations like this before. They moved deeper into the subway tunnels, the smoke and dust thickening, stinging their eyes and lungs. Amara stumbled over a broken metal grate and nearly fell, but his hand caught her wrist instantly, pulling her upright. Her heart pounded as she gasped for air. I can't believe you're risking yourself. Me? She said, her voice trembling. Why do you care? He shot her a glance, one that was fleeting yet intense, and for a moment, she thought she saw something almost vulnerable behind his hardened exterior. Because you matter, he said simply. Then, his expression hardened again, and he pulled her forward without another word as they navigated through the twisting passages. A low mechanical growl echoed behind them. The sound was different from the drones, a heavy, deliberate clank, like footsteps amplified and distorted through metal. Amara's stomach knotted with fear. What's that? She asked, whispering as quietly as possible. They're not just machines, he replied, eyes narrowing as he peered around a corner. Those are hunters and forces programmed to track, subdue, and eliminate. They don't stop until their target is neutralized. And right now, that target is us. Amara's mind raced. She wanted to scream, to run, to hide, but the tunnels offered little cover and they were still moving. She had to rely on him, follow his lead, trust that his skill would keep them alive. And somehow, in the midst of fear so thick it felt like a physical weight pressing on her chest, a strange thread of trust wove itself between them, binding her to him with a force she couldn't explain. They ducked into a maintenance corridor, a narrow passage barely wide enough for the two of them to squeeze through side by side. The walls were lined with exposed wiring, broken panels, and scorch marks from a past fire that had long since died down. The faint hum of electricity provided a rhythm to their movements, a subtle reminder that even in this forsaken place, life or at least power persisted. They'll be here soon, he said, his voice a harsh whisper. And when they do, we can't hide forever. We have to fight, or we'll die before we have a chance to escape. Amara swallowed hard, her throat dry. Fight. She had never even held a weapon, never been trained to defend herself. And yet, when she looked at him, standing resolute beside her, she felt a strange surge of courage. Somehow, his presence made her believe she could survive anything. Somehow, she could not imagine being left behind. The sound of heavy boots echoed. Again, closer this time, the metallic scrape of movement vibrating through the concrete floor beneath their feet. Shadows stretched and twisted along the walls, and Amara felt the undeniable tension in the air. Whatever was coming was intelligent, relentless, and dangerous. She pressed herself closer to him instinctively, feeling his warmth, his strength, and the unwavering certainty that he would not let anything happen to her. He gestured to a side vent, half hidden behind a corroded maintenance panel. Through here, he whispered, pushing the panel aside and motioning for her to follow. The space was tight, forcing them to crawl single file. Amara's heart hammered as she inched forward, the dark metal pressing against her arms and legs, the sound of their movements muffled by the tunnel walls. Above, the mechanical growls and echoes of pursuit grew louder, sending tremors of fear through her entire body. They emerged into a wider chamber, the remnants of an old station concourse barely recognizable under layers of soot and debris. The faint glow of fires from above filtered through cracks in the ceiling, casting an eerie, flickering light. Amara could barely catch her breath, her lungs burning from exertion, her muscles screaming with exhaustion. Yet, even here, in the heart of ruin, he remained vigilant, scanning the space with eyes that missed nothing. Suddenly, metallic clang rang out from the far end of the chamber and shadows shifted unnaturally. Amara froze, instinctively moving behind him, clutching his arm. The shadowed figure they had glimpsed earlier, with relentless and terrifyingly precise, stepped forward, its form partially illuminated by the flickering light. It moved with a predatory grace, tilting its head as if analyzing them, calculating, deciding. They're scout, he muttered, his voice low and tense. They're testing us, probing for weaknesses. Stay behind me. Amara's stomach churned. She wanted to scream, to run, to throw herself into the collapsing city above, anything to escape the terror that now surrounded them. But she couldn't move, she couldn't leave him. Somehow, in the chaos, in the smoke, in the unrelenting pursuit of death, she had become tethered to him, and she knew that her survival depended on his skill and his unwavering refusal to abandon her. The figure advanced closer, mechanical joints clicking, servos whirring. Its eyes glowed faintly red, scanning, probing, searching. And as it stepped into the dim light, Amara saw it more clearly than before. Its movements were almost human, yet impossibly precise, unnerving in its perfection. A predator in every sense, but intelligent, calculating, and relentless. He stepped forward to block her view, placing himself between her and the advancing hunter. "You won't touch her," he said, voice low, steady, unyielding. The figure paused, tilting its head slightly, as if amused, then continued its approach. Deliberate, unhurried, inevitable. Imara's heart pounded, adrenaline surging as fear and awe collided in her chest. She pressed herself closer to him, feeling the absolute certainty in his stance, the unspoken promise that he would not let her fall, would not abandon her even when the odds were impossibly stacked against them. And then, as the figure drew near, the ceiling above shuddered violently. Dust and debris rained down around them, and a deep, resonant crack echoed through the chamber. The hunter froze for a moment, recalculating, and Imara realized with a sickening certainty that the tunnels themselves were becoming as dangerous as the relentless machine before them. He grabbed her hand, gripping it tight, and she felt a jolt of both fear and determination. "We have to move," he said, eyes locked on the figure and the trembling structure around them. Now, together, they raced deeper into the tunnels, dodging falling debris and sparks from exposed wires, the hunter following silently but relentlessly, calculating every move. And as they turned a corner, Imara knew that the danger was far from over. The tunnels held more than just collapsing ruins and relentless hunters. The secrets awaited them, revelations that would challenge everything she believed, and choices that would determine not only their survival but the fate of the city burning above. The tunnel was narrowed sharply, forcing Imara and him to move single file. Every step echoed ominously off the concrete walls, and the faint hum of distant fires above reminded them that the city above wasn't done with them yet. The hunter had fallen slightly behind after the last tremor, but she could feel its presence, precise and unrelenting, stalking their every movement like a shadow that could strike at any moment. He paused, pressing a hand to the wall, listening. His posture was tense, muscles coiled like a predator ready to spring. "We're close," he whispered. "There's an exit up ahead. If we make it, we'll have a chance to regroup and plan. If we don't..." His voice trailed, but the weight of the unsaid words pressed on her. Imara's chest tightened, and she realized the gravity of the situation. They were relying on him for more than guidance. He was the line between survival and annihilation. The corridor opened into a large maintenance chamber. Its ceiling partially collapsed, exposing a jagged slice of sky above. Smoke and ash poured through the opening, and Imara could see the orange glow of the fires still consuming the city. She stumbled for a moment, disoriented by the contrast between darkness and light, but he grabbed her arm, steadying her. "Keep moving," he urged. "We're almost there." Her eyes scanned the chamber, taking in the broken equipment, the toppled crates, the dangling cables sparking intermittently. There was no cover, no hiding spot large enough to shield them both from the hunter's senses if it appeared again. The tension was suffocating, but she could feel his confidence, unwavering, even in the face of overwhelming danger. Somehow, that confidence grounded her, gave her courage she didn't know she possessed. They moved cautiously across the debris-strewn floor. Each step was deliberate, measured. He scanned every shadow, every corner, anticipating the smallest movement that might signal danger. Imara noticed the way his eyes never wavered, the way he maintained a calm she could barely fathom. And though the hunter was still somewhere behind them, relentless and intelligent, she felt a strange sense of hope. He was their anchor, their shield, their only chance. Suddenly a metallic clang echoed through the chamber. Imara froze, heart hammering in her chest. He instantly pressed her down behind a toppled crate, crouching low, muscles tensed. The sound repeated, closer this time, deliberate, each echo bouncing ominously off the walls. Then, from the shadows, a figure stepped forward, humanoid, impossibly fast, and more terrifying in its precision than ever before. Its glowing red eyes scanned the chamber, flicking past Imara and locking onto him. "They're not just after you," he muttered, his jaw tight. "They're after both of us. Stay behind me, and whatever happens, don't let go of me." The hunter moved with terrifying fluidity, advancing step by step, analyzing, calculating, adapting. Sparks from exposed wires danced across the floor, illuminating its sleek metallic limbs, and Imara realized with a shock how unnatural and dangerous it truly was. Her instincts screamed to flee, but there was nowhere to run. She pressed herself closer to him, feeling the strength in his presence, the unshakable resolve in his stance. Somehow, he made survival feel possible, even in the shadow of death. "Why are they here?" she whispered, barely audible. "What do they want?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slowly removed a small device from his belt, pressing a button that sent a low-frequency pulse through the chamber. The hunter faltered slightly, as if disturbed by the interference. "They're programmed to hunt," he explained finally, "to neutralize threats, and right now, the fact that we're alive, together, is a threat to their control. They want us gone." Imara's stomach churned with fear and awe. The odds were impossibly stacked against them, yet he remained steadfast, a living embodiment of courage. He reached for her hand, gripping it tightly, and for the first time, she felt the weight of absolute trust. No words could articulate the bond forming between them in that moment. Bond forged in fire, danger, and desperation. The hunter advanced again, undeterred by the pulse. He grabbed a long metal pipe from the floor, holding it defensively in front of him. "We fight," he said, eyes blazing with resolve. "I won't let you die here. Not now. Not ever." Emira's heart pounded. She had never imagined herself in a fight like this, but somehow, standing beside him, feeling his certainty, she found herself ready. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, feeling a strange strength surge through her veins. They were no longer just running, they were resisting, surviving, claiming their right to live. The hunter lunged, moving with terrifying speed. Sparks flew as the pipe struck its metallic limb, sending reverberations through the chamber. It recoiled slightly, recalculating, but advanced again without hesitation. He swung the pipe with precise force, striking again and again, each blow measured and effective. Emira followed his movements instinctively, ducking, dodging, and learning from his rhythm, the unspoken communication between them turning into a dance of survival. A sudden tremor shook the chamber, and the ceiling groaned ominously. Dust rained down, and debris shifted, creating new hazards. The hunter faltered for just a fraction of a second, enough for him to pull Amara behind a larger piece of rubble. "We move now," he hissed, and they sprinted toward the far end of the chamber, leaping over broken machinery and fallen beams. They reached a ladder leading up to a ventilation shaft. He boosted her up first, then climbed after her. The shaft was tight and dark, the air thick with smoke and heat. Each movement was a test of endurance and trust, and Emira clung to him as they inched forward. Below them, the hunter recalibrated, sensing their escape, moving with a mechanical precision that made her skin crawl. Finally, they reached the top of the shaft, emerging into the cool night air. The city below burned, but here, just above the devastation, they could breathe. She looked at him, awe and gratitude flooding her chest. "You could have left me," she whispered, voice trembling. He shook his head, brushing ash from her hair. "Not a chance. Not you." Around them, the first faint signs of survivors began to emerge, drawn by the fires or by hope, or perhaps by the sheer defiance of those who refused to succumb. Emira realized then that survival wasn't just about fleeing, it was about standing, fighting, and trusting those who refused to abandon you, no matter the costs. The hunter paused at the edge of the roof, scanning for any trace of pursuit. Its glowing eyes swept the horizon, then turned upward, registering their location. He clenched his jaw. "It's not over," he said grimly. "They'll follow, and we'll need more than courage to survive the next wave." Imara's eyes met his, and in that moment, she understood the depth of his resolve. He had risked everything for her, defied death itself, and refused to let her world and her burn alone. The city below was a ruin, but above the chaos, above the flames, she felt a spark of hope, fragile and bright. She squeezed his hand, and he returned the gesture, a silent promise that whatever came next, they would face it together. And as the wind carried the scent of smoke and ash across the rooftop, Emira knew that even when the world burned, survival, courage, and the unyielding refusal to abandon each other could ignite a flame stronger than any fire.